O'Hare is an actor you know, or maybe it's Tim O'Hare or Flynn O'Hare. I don't know. He played Jerry in Parks and Rec, or actually it turned out it was Gary, or maybe Larry or Terry. He's out with a new book called Welcome to Pawnee. It answers all the questions I didn't know I had, and I'm going to ask Jim some more. Hey, welcome to The Gist.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
So I know that you were up for the role of Ron Swanson, and you are the first to say, thankfully, it didn't go to you because of it went to Nick Offerman, and he's fantastic. Were they seeing you, were they asking you to read because they were really considering you for that role? Or do they do the thing where they want to get a bunch of people in to give them ideas for other roles in this really big cast?
That's exactly what they were doing. When it's such a big, high-profile show, because this went in as, when I was first heard of it, it was the untitled Amy Poehler project, and it had already been given an episode order. Normally you do a pilot, it's one and done, and then it either gets picked up or it doesn't. Generally they don't. But this had a lot of juice behind it before it ever went in front of a camera. So my guess is the network was like, yeah, you got to give us a lot of choices. I think Mike and Greg, Mike Sure, Greg Daniels, Nick was always their guy most likely. But I also, in doing this book, I learned so many things. And Mike said to me, there was somebody else. It was almost somebody else. But Nick ultimately was their choice. And so to bring in people like me, I'm just, someone who'd been out there a lot, very much a journeyman actor. And the casting director had said, which again, I find this all out later. I didn't know any of this until I was putting this book together. The casting director said, her name was Allison Jones, and she's like, you got to see Jim O'Hare. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
So they did. And so I went in, and my going in on that type of audition is always, I want to impress them, never thinking they're giving me one of the co-leads in the new Amy Poehler project.
Right. Right, which, as you say, is hot. Daniels and Schur had just done The Office, so they were Golden Boys,
yes.
And Amy Poehler was this breakout star on SNL. It was under contract with the network, and that's why it wasn't just a pilot. This was a done deal. So you were like, an unknown is the second star. Me,
exactly.
but still. Yes.
Yeah, even though I had that face, so many times, you look so familiar out in the world. I'd worked a lot, but again, unknown, technically. And so they... So my goal was just to impress them enough that maybe down the road they'll give me a guest spot, or they'll give me maybe on The Office, because I'm a big fan of The Office and I knew who these guys were. So I just wanted to do a good job in the room. And apparently I did whatever my interpretation of Ron Swanson was good enough to have them bring me back for the role of Jerry down the line, which even when they did that, they obviously didn't know what they were looking for, because when I walk into an audition room, generally, I'm going to see me. And by that I mean I'm going to see the other big guy, the other tall, fat, whatever terms you want to use. I'm going to see that guy.
These are Midwesterners who like college football and let's say eat Cinnabons. Yeah,
it's 100%. Yeah, ooh, yummy. And so, but I walked into that room, to that audition room, and it was not me. I mean, there were some me's, but there was tall and short and fat and skinny and black and white and Asian, and it was across the board. So
is that intimidating or is that a compliment?
Yeah, it's weird. It can be a blessing and a curse. Like if ultimately they truly did want my type, there were just a couple of options. So that helps me. Right. But if they truly don't know what they want, there's a lot of people, a lot of other options out there. And so that can be a little scary. But, for whatever miracle, it did go my way. And it's so weird because, when actors, we audition all the time, and it's the grind. And the thing about this business is, I found out a statistic. They say that if an actor books 1 out of 10 auditions, they're doing well, which means 90% of our lives we're being told no. No, you're not it. You're not the guy or girl or whatever. And so,
or things like, or they loved you, but you were too funny.
A million times. Oh, they loved you. I tell a story in the book. I did an audition where I thought I nailed it. And this is pre-Parks. And my phone was ringing like 10 minutes after I got in the car. And I'm thinking, damn, that was a quick booking. And my agent is calling to tell me I lost the job because it was a dramatic role. And they thought they couldn't see past the humor I brought into the room when we were just chatting, which, of course, makes me effing crazy because we're actors. See past whatever my bullshit is up front and take a look at the audition. But anyway, there was a lesson learned.
Right, and you also would think that casting directors know that actors aren't just one thing and people aren't just one thing, and you shouldn't have to make them work to see the serious thing. But if you're being funny and they're vibing with that charismatically, you would hope they would say, okay, there's a way to use this. This guy pops on screen. This guy will be fun to work with. It would seem to be more of a benefit than a detriment. But you say that you changed the way you audition for every dramatic role since.
I walk in, I'm very hello. I do my basic pleasantries, and then I do the audition. And I've even had to be careful now because of Parks. A lot of times, the people in the room, they want to ask me questions about Parks because, for whatever miracle has happened, it is a show that has broken through just normal shows that are shot, done, and then disappear. We're still out there. We're syndicated. We're on TV stations. We're streaming. We're still out there, and it's a beloved show, which I'm so grateful, every day grateful for. So people will say, hey, what was this like? What was that like? What was Chris Pratt like? How was Amy Poehler? And I feel bad, but I kind of have to shut it down if it's a dramatic audition. Now, if I'm in there for some comedy thing, I'll tell my stories. I got stories, and I'm happy to tell them. But yeah, I had to learn a lesson. But when I went in for Parks, I think what I found out later was, when I was interviewing Greg's like, yeah, we just liked you. You were funny. And we were like, put him at a desk. It'll work out.
Yeah.
Of course, I never knew that.
And so you couldn't have read for Jerry, right? Because Jerry at that point probably didn't have any lines. Just an idea.
He didn't exist.
Yeah, let's put some talented people in the background with the expectation that they'll have more of a role. And that was the template of The Office. And with Parks and Rec, there were even fewer people in that literal office, so your role was even bigger than any of the background players or office workers on The Office.
Well, dude, I'll tell you, my agents called when the offer came in to do the show. The official, once I had, I'd read for Ron, a couple weeks later I read for Jerry, and then, 2 weeks later I get the call to do the role of Jerry. And my agents, and I'm not slighting them for this, they were totally looking out for me, but they said, we don't know if you should do this. And I said, what are you talking about? I was so excited, this sounds great. And they said, they're being honest with us. They don't know what's happening with this character. And so believe me, there's nothing wrong with background work, but at this point in my career, I'd been a busy actor. I wasn't doing background work. And they said, you might feel like
and I should just say, background work is the nice term for extra.
Extra work.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's great.
You wouldn't want to be hired to be an extra. Yeah.
Well, not at that point in my career, certainly. Yeah. So I said, oh, no, this is a no-brainer. I have watched every episode of The Office. I have seen what has happened to those background workers, the Kevins and the Phyllis and the Oscars and the Stanleys and the Meredith. So for me, it was a no-brainer. And just like on The Office, these background players became, part of the history of the show.
But Parks and Rec was a very improv-friendly show. And some of the great lines were Chris Pratt, who's too handsome to be that funny, saying things like, in an episode where Leslie thinks she has the flu, he says, I was looking it up on my computer, and it says you might have network connectivity problems. And apparently that was just off his dome. That was not in the
off
script.
His dome. And Mike Schur will tell you that is the funniest line ever not written on Parks and Recreation. And it's true.
It works on many levels, right? It's
works
very
on so many
character-driven.
levels.
That's his character would say it, and it's great. Yeah.
There's also an infamous, if you go on YouTube, outtake of Pratt regarding the Kardashians. I don't know if you've ever seen it. If you haven't, go to YouTube. It's crazy. But here's what they would do, and I think it's why the cast remained as tight as we have remained, and why we were so tight during the show. After every scene was done, after everyone's happy, director, writers, actor, everyone's happy with the scene, they would yell, okay, fun run. And fun run meant we could do whatever the hell we wanted. And, we knew what the scene was, we knew what we had to get to, but we could say whatever the hell we wanted to. And that's when some of this crazy stuff would come up. And the genius, again, in my opinion, of them having us do this, when improvisers are doing that, they're playing together, they're having fun, and I think that just tightened up this squad. And to this day, we have a thing called the Parks Family Text. We are still super tight with each other. Everybody for this book jumped in. Pratt, who's so damn busy, I don't think he knows what country he's in half the time. he sat down and made time for it. It's a special group of people. But yes, the other thing we all say.
Oh, I got to say, I just have to tell my audience, the book reads as, it's very much Jim's story, but it's also a quasi oral history of Parks and Rec. It works on that level. You have interviews, or you'll be talking about something that you only know from your perspective, and then boom, Greg Daniels jumps in, or Chris Pratt jumps in, and he'll tell you, or they'll tell you what they know from their perspective.
And what I've also learned, I think this is something we all know, but until you do it, it's so amazing how we can think one thing and someone else was thinking something totally else during the same situation.
Right.
That's why stories a lot of times don't match up in the real world. Like someone said this and someone said, I didn't say that, I said this. So it was so great to get their perspectives. But the thing I have to give credit to, Mike Short created, and Greg, a writer's room of, it's a big word, but I'm going to say it, writing geniuses. And the scripts were so tight that even though we get a lot of credit for the improvisation that happened on that show, those scripts were so tight, they didn't need us. They did not need us. Every week, I would leave a table read, and I'd go, I can't believe they've done it again. Because, again, as someone who's so enamored with writers, I was just blown away.
Yeah.
And so it was, we get a lot of credit for being these improv geniuses, but 99% of the credit has to go to the writers. It just really does.
You probably know this, but I think creativity flourishes within limits, right? And so when they do a fun take, you still know the beats you have to hit, the parameters. You know what the furniture is, and then you figure out how to sit on it or where to walk around it, metaphorically.
And some of the fun ones would go for 20 minutes, which is silly. It's a 21-minute show. You cannot have one scene doing 20 minutes. And here's this.
You
was
impose a bottle episode upon the show where it was not there. It's just
exactly.
Too good.
And one of my favorite stories I had heard was Mike and Amy had very much, because Greg, he was with us, but I had to go back to the office. He was their showrunner, and Mike Schur was our showrunner.
Like a dad.
Like a dad. They're there. They keep track of everything. It's a big job. But Amy was very much, we all called her, our fearless leader. She was the mom. I'm easily 8 years older than Amy, maybe 9, and she was my mother as much as everyone else's mother on that set. That's just who Amy is. But Mike and Amy had a no assholes policy. Yeah. So if somebody came in and they weren't ready to play, they were never seen again. And one of my favorite stories is we had a new director come in, and every time we had a new director, they would check in with us afterward. How did it go? Did you have any issues? Blah, blah, blah. And not, most of the time we never had. I remember there was one director, they were a little gruff, I thought, compared to how we normally ran things. And
was that Werner Herzog?
No, it was not Werner. Oh God, but he did the show. How awesome is that? No, it was not Werner, but it was somebody, and then we never saw them again. So that's just how it went. But one of the directors had said to our line producer was Morgan Saget, who is the greatest line producer, who's now an exec producer. He's doing Hacks and everything else. He's amazing. He's so great at his job. But they said to him, because Morgan checked in with him, how's it going? And the director said, well, it's good, but sometimes it's hard to get them to break apart. They're all chatting and laughing. And Morgan said, if our worst problem is that these people are getting along, we'll eat that time. Whatever that, you know what I mean? If that's going to cause us a little extra time, we will eat it. Because let me tell you, I've been on a lot of shows. I did an interview recently where they told me, and I looked it up afterward because, to be honest, I hadn't known, but I have over 200 credits on IMDb.
Most of them as a Santa Claus of some sort.
A lot of Santa Claus.
A lot of Santas.
Yeah, I did one last year with Octavia Spencer. That was amazing. But so I have over 200 credits. I've been on a lot of shows. I've been on Friends. I've been on so many different shows over the years.
Right.
And it makes me crazy when I'm watching a late night show and somebody from a show is guesting and they're like, oh, we're like one big happy family. And I'm like, F you. I was on your show. Nobody was talking to anybody. You were miserable. Right. And the difference with Parks is it was this amazing experience. I used to hate the days I was off, which how crazy is that? Like we'd get these day of days for the next week telling you what your schedule is going to be. and like, so say it would be like I'm working, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off Thursday, work Friday. I'd be like, oh, damn, Thursdays are good. Like I wanted to be there. And it wasn't just this amazing cast who I love, but the crew, we had 85% of the crew stayed with us for the entire show. Mike, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. When we wrapped, when they decided to do 13 final episodes of the last season, and the network let Mike and Amy decide, how do they want to do this? Do they want to keep going? Do they want to wrap it up? And Amy had always said, I want to go out with people wanting more. We don't want to go out where we're like, oh, God, is that thing still on the air? And so her and Mike made the decision to do 13. Now, I just assumed that we're going to lose a lot of our crew because they're going to try to get on shows that are going, the full 22, 24 episodes. We lost one person. Yeah. One person. And you couldn't blame them. I totally get why somebody would leave if there was a possibility. But these other people were like, no, I got to see it end. I got to be here for it. So it was that kind of a place.
So all of the actors, the crew, they loved going to work. Which characters in Parks and Rec do you think didn't like going to work at the Pawnee office of Parks and Rec? Because I know Ron Swanson, as a libertarian, probably doesn't think his job should exist. But of course, he's curmudgeonly and very much bonded and needed those people. Who else in the office do you think didn't want to go to work every day?
Well, I think Tom, Aziz's character, he wanted to be elsewhere. He's a baller, as he will tell you.
Yeah, he wanted to be developing his toddler cologne, right?
Exactly. So he wants to be somewhere else. Jerry, my character, he absolutely is fine there. It's a job. He doesn't care. It's all about getting home to his family at the end of the day. So for Jerry, 100%, he wants to be there.
And you can understand why upon meeting his family.
Of course. The beautiful Christy Brinkley.
When they told you she was being cast as your wife, what was your reaction?
Well, dude, here's what I was told. We're going to look for a Christy Brinkley type. So my reaction just from that was, what are we talking about? That is amazing. Like, yes, let's do that. And, when they do that kind of thing, they put the pie in the sky guest, like maybe this type. We'll never get that person, but that type. But they reached out to her. And the only reason she took it, she did not know what Parks and Recreation was, but her daughter did. Her daughter's Sailor, and her daughter convinced her she's got to do the show. So when they say to me, well, we have your wife, who do we get? Christy Brinkley. Dude, when I was young, I had that red bathing suit poster in my room. And now she's playing my wife. It made no sense, and yet it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And, they gave Jerry, my character at work was very put upon, I guess is a good term. He was the punching bag. So Mike said, we got to give him a real life, or why hasn't he killed himself at this point? Like, we got to give him something.
Yeah.
So they gave Jerry a whole lot. They gave him an amazing family, a huge penis, the big stuff. And so they took care of him where it counted. But, dude, I was so excited. And then Christy showed up that first day, and she is, this is going to sound crazy. Maybe you'll know what I'm saying or not. She's sunshine, if that makes any sense.
She's luminescent. Like, this is human? You're like, we're of the same species? Okay.
Exactly.
If you say
she
so.
Brightens up a room. She brightens it up. And she saw me the first day, and I'm thinking, is she going to be like a little here's this gorgeous woman, and out of all the characters, she's got to be my wife. And she saw me, and she just screamed. We were in the the studio lot, and she was in the parking area, and she just screamed, "My husband!" And she ran over to me and gave me the greatest hug. And I thought, oh my God, I love this. So it was awesome, and she is smart and funny and a great storyteller. I hear she has a book coming out, which she should. She has been through it. And Rob Lowe, who's also, he played Chris on the show, he is a great storyteller also. But even he, when Christy was telling stories, even Rob would just be sitting there, and we're all staring at her like, what the hell is she telling us? Because she has been through it. And so...
But, it also must be nice for Rob to, for once, be in a room with someone who's plausibly better looking than he is. just to not be the upper 1% that one day.
Exactly, for a little bit. Rob and I are, I think there's a year and a half difference at our ages. And one time some article came out, and it was our pictures next to each other, and it said, what's wrong with these pictures? And they were mocking me, obviously. Yeah. But I said to Rob, dude, You are what's wrong with this picture. I look like the hell I'm supposed to look like, okay? You, sir.
Let me give you my name, age, demographic, and family history. That
and
comports.
I'll show you. That's who I look like, yes. You, sir, have made whatever deal you've made with the devil. God bless you. But I am not the freak in this picture you are.
So
Yeah.
I understand that, and you understand that as an actor, how you look and come across. That is your actual business. But I was reading your Wikipedia page, and these were some reviews or quotes from earlier roles. The grotesquely ursine Jim O'Hare. Ursine means bear-like. Couldn't they have
Exactly.
left it at bear-like?
Exactly.
And then, as Harvey Crudup, the unattractive husband of protagonist Tammy Tyler, did they have to say that we know what you look like?
I
don't
used
think
to
it's
say this all the
unattractive.
when I was doing theater in Chicago, every review, and I mean it could be a glowing review. It could be like the greatest actor we've ever seen. It will begin with the overweight, the sloppy, the whatever. They couldn't help themselves. Every single review, no matter how flattering ultimately the review was, they had to mention my size, my look, or whatever.
Did that even if you knew that and were aware of that and had a sense of humor about that and knew that this was the kind of acting you would do where you embrace that role, did it hurt?
Yeah. It does. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. You learn to numb it out, and I certainly have, because it still happens. I have been a fat guy since my understanding is 4 years old. They used to call me Peanut when I was between one and a child and 4 because I was so scrawny. My dad called me Peanut. Well, I don't know whether they went overboard and fed me, or I was like, I'm going to break off from that saying, and I have certainly accomplished that. And I have been overweight always since I was 4 years old.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to say. So, and I'm not. I have mirrors. I know what I look like, but I also, to be an actor, I think a character actor, you are in a better spot to continually work than the leading man, because there's going to be a window. And with the grayer I got, the more work I got. The more wrinkles and the cheeks and whatever happened, the more work I got. So it's a blessing and a curse. Ultimately, I think, I look like an O'Hare, and I'm proud of it.
Well, I was also, those reviews were from the 80s and 90s, and supposedly we have come a little bit past that. And I think we probably, even though women are more policed and punished for not looking like the ideal, the supposed ideal, I don't know that people would put that in the newspaper today, but I do think, but you tell me, has that subsided? Are they still do you still see these offhanded, kind of insulting references to looks when it comes to men, or you as a man in particular?
I think you can still do it to men. I think you're right about women, though. They have to be more careful. But I haven't really thought about it till I'm thinking about it right now, because a lot of reviews, in the last couple of years, I've done a bunch of different things. I think you might be right. I think there has been less of that, because I'm now thinking in my head, I think there is less. And I don't know if it's because, have I earned more respect? I don't know. Maybe when I was starting out, they're like, who is this guy? We can, shit all over him. Who cares? I don't know. But that's interesting. I've never thought about it. But when I think about it now, I think there is less of commenting on my physical appearance. Though I have to, and this really isn't about physical appearance, but I want to share with you, I did a play in Chicago called Stumpy's Gang. Yeah. And it really opened up everything for me.
I believe that was where the grotesquely ursine Jim O'Hare quote comes from.
Exactly. And one of the reviews on that show, and this is my favorite review of all time, here's a quote that has stuck with me forever. Here was the quote in the review. Jim O'Hare, though he seems like a nice enough fellow, should be embarrassed to do what he's doing on stage in the privacy of his own home. Oh. Is that a review?
Why is that person in theater reviews? Don't you know how this works?
Yes, but man, we even used it in the ads. Like, we pulled quotes from that, because it was like, hey, you want to see some effed up show? Apparently, this is the show you got to see. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Very edgy. So I do want to connect it to the tone of Parks and Rec, which it's not a cruel show, and I know. And I've read in your book, but I've even heard I've heard Mike Schur talk about this. In fact, I had him on a sports show we did. I mean, he's a great baseball guy, and we talked.
Oh wait, I didn't know Mike liked sports.
Right. Right, exactly.
Yes.
Wait, Aziz likes technology? I didn't know that. Yeah. So he was saying that the first season, and you get this, they weren't exactly sure what the tone should be in terms of how much they were going to mock the characters, maybe subtly, and how much on the side of the characters they were going to be. And then it changed a bit, and we were all rooting for Leslie rather than thinking that she was in this either quixotic or pointless or kind of sad existence. I mean, it changed a little bit, but it was important to the show. So that's one observation. But then I wanted to connect it to, but you were the punching bag. Was there some way that they punched not so cruelly, but enough to get the comedy across?
I get so many people say to me, I love that show, but they were so mean to you, and that made me mad, and all that. And I see where they're coming from. I'm a huge Family Guy fan. You know, I'm the Meg. You know, if you watch Family Guy, Meg is for no reason shit on.
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason, you know, they are terrible to Meg. And so Jerry was that guy. It's so weird because I see where people are coming from. And some of the other cast members, like Chris Pratt, one time he said to me, I forget what the bit was, but it was, you know, a slam on Jerry. And Chris was like, you know, Jimmy, do you think this one seems pretty rough? Are you okay with this? And it's like, dude, number one, I love that type of humor. I am a blue type of humor guy. I am a ball buster. I like my own balls being busted. That's who, you know, put me in a room with a bunch of people who are just slamming the hell out of each other. That makes me happy. That is my go-to. So I loved it. And I said, also, we're all making a lot of money. So it's all good. Like life is good.
What your character became and fleshing it out and having you married to Christy Brinkley was connected. It wouldn't have happened. The contrast comedically wouldn't be as much if you weren't the punching bag in the office.
Exactly. And as I always point out, when it counted, they were always there for Jerry. They truly were. He was their go-to. Ron Swanson, there's a talking head where he says every office has a schlemiel and a schlemazel. In our office, Jerry is the schlemiel and the schlemazel. You know, so he's all of it. But the point being, when it mattered, they always had Jerry's back. And there's the great episode where my retirement episode, which of course scared the shit out of me. I thought they were getting rid of me, but they didn't. But Leslie comes to Jerry's house and she sees he's got it all. He's literally got it all. And Jerry knew what the situation was, but he also knew what was important to him. And I think Jerry loves everyone he works with, loves them. But nothing is more important than 5 o'clock and going home to his family. And there's nothing wrong with that. But Mike will tell the story that it got to the point in the writer's room, so many people were coming up with so many Jerry slams. He's finally like, okay, we got to write other stuff too. This can't just be about slamming Jerry.
Because I think writers love that, and the culture
it's
has
fun.
Moved. It's moved a little bit away from that, and if you give writers an opportunity to go off, they will.
And to get back to the point you made earlier about, like with Leslie's character and stuff, the blessing and the curse that Parks had at the very beginning was, what a blessing. We're giving you 6 episodes. Wow, that doesn't happen. The curse is we're giving you 6 episodes because normally you do a pilot and you can figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Right. Episode 2 is usually very different. Yeah.
Way different. They figured this character wouldn't do this, or maybe this character's gone, or this character's added. Pilots are super important. We didn't have that. And unfortunately, when the pilot aired, a lot of people were looking at Leslie's character as too much like Michael Scott's, from The Office. And some people were turned off by that. So once the regrouping started and they found out who Leslie really was, in my opinion, of course I'm biased, whatever, from season 2, episode 1, we never went back. We soared. I thought every season was better. And I think the reason our seasons stayed as strong as they stayed is that Mike Schur never left us. A lot of times when a guy, girl creates a big show, they get pulled to do other stuff because the networks are like, give me another hit. And that happened with Mike, but in his case, he created Brooklyn Nine-Nine with Dan Gore, but Dan Gore left us, and Mike stayed with us. So we never lost Mike's voice, and I believe that's why the show stayed as strong as it did for, all 7 seasons.
Jim O'Heir he's Jerry, and he's the author of if you like the show, or even if you're somewhat curious about how big ensemble comedies work when they really work well, he's the author of Welcome to Pawnee. Jim, it was great talking to you.
Let me just quickly ask, did you see the cover?
I think so. I got the PDF of the cover.
How great is that cover? And I take no credit for it. I didn't do it. But it's genius. And for fans of the show, it's caricatures of the cast as well as all the recurring characters. There's Easter eggs for the people, the young people who use that term. I learned recently what it meant. Anyway, so I'm a big fan of the cover. Yeah.
So you're
Check
saying if you were to judge a book by its cover, that's perfectly fine with
this
you.
is the book. This is the book to judge by its cover. Yes.
It's good inside, but it kind of goes down from there. Yeah. It's like a show where the pilot episode is the best one.
Exactly.
Jim, great talking to you. Thanks so much.
You too, Mike. This was fun.